What's up with everyone fucking talking about why do we care about genre? Huh? Jake?
Who cares about genre?
Everyone.
Tell me.
Every single so you post about Big Walk, right? Everyone's saying Friendslop. And then there's this whole conversation about is Big Walk Friendslop? And I think that leads to a very specific question that I think we've both been sort of asking ourselves. Who cares? Like what? Who cares about such a debate, right?
Is this the intro bit, or have we started the podcast?
It feels like we started the podcast.
I might have to start over. I'm lost.
You want to start over?
I'm lost. I don't know what's going on. I'm not ready. I'm not seated.
Okay, then let's get seated.
A critical error is an error which the OS cannot reasonably ignore. Jake Steinberg is a streamer, writer, and certified yapper. Complimentary. Peter Hunt Szpytek is a YouTuber, journalist, and certified yapper. Derogatory. These are the things they cannot reasonably ignore.
It just felt like to me we were getting the podcast topic really front and center in that intro bit.
It was there. It was.
So now do we say it again?
I guess we must.
So we're talking about genre today.
Yeah.
Okay. I think when we do an episode like this, there is this almost implicit understanding that we are taking note of something happening in the critical space and then offering a corrective.
Yeah.
So, what is our issue and what is our corrective?
I think the issue is everyone cares so much about dissecting the parameters of these specific genres.
Ooh, okay.
Everyone cares, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with doing that inherently.
Okay.
But it feels like that is so often the only conversation surrounding a game, and it is very a lot of times, and this is something we come back to a lot on this podcast. People seem to be kind of uninterested in actually talking about what the game itself is actually doing, and instead they want to talk about every other thing that's surrounding the game. Big Walk. Is it Friendslop? Is it not? Is it a Metroidvania? Does the Metroidvania even exist?
Did someone say that?
I saw someone saying that. I don't know if it was not someone I followed or knew, so I don't know if that was.
All right, that's public execution material.
Can I be also honest? I just think we can just call them puzzle games. I think.
No, that's too.
Do you like Metroidvania?
No, I don't. I don't even like Metroidvania. I don't. Can I tell you?
Yeah.
I understand what somebody says when they say Friendslop far more than I understand what somebody's saying when they say Metroidvania.
So this is something that I think is kind of interesting, and it's the way that like genre and the way that we talk about genre has just gotten to a point where it already means nothing, right? It's just a categorization to just get a general vibe for like what something is, but when it gets like overused, I think is when we start to dip into things that sort of confuse what the initial thing is. To your point about Metroidvanias, I mean, people will call like Dark Souls games Metroidvanias, and like I just don't really think that's true. Like I've always sort of just nodded along and said like yeah, because I just don't, I want to be polite, but like I really don't think that's true. I think that you create paths to get back to where you were, but I don't think that necessarily makes a Metroidvania.
I'm not necessarily a scholar when it comes to these particular games, so it would be hard for me to say. But I think what's being demonstrated here, and I should confess something to the listener, is that I'm putting you and them at a kind of intellectual disadvantage in this conversation, because I have spent the past few days writing an essay about genre, and I simply have I have like preloaded source material and citations like ready to go about this. So I think what we're kind of demonstrating here though is that if you say people call these games Metroidvanias, and I don't think that they are, what we are demonstrating, I think, is this kind of discourse that is trying to convince you that we are talking about a video game.
Yes,
but we're not. We're not talking about a video game. We're actually just doing this other thing, this genre discourse, right? And I think that there are few things as boring as trying to create a extremely rigid definition of any genre, because all that invites, of course, is the counterexample. That's how you own somebody in the marketplace of ideas. They say this is what a Metroidvania is. Then you go, well, are you saying this isn't a Metroidvania? So we can't possibly do that. Allow me to hit you with some citations that might illuminate the topic.
Oh my gosh, please.
So in my research, I came across this book called Philosophical Investigations, and you had this guy Ludwig Wittgenstein, and he is
Love Ludwig, by the way.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this is that he is actually really interested in the idea of the game. So it's actually very transferable to what we're talking about.
Sure.
But he's on this mission to find a single quality shared by everything that we would call a game.
Oh, sure. This is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that quality? And he cannot find one, because he cannot find a single shared quality between every single thing we call a game without coming up with a kind of valid counterpoint. So he kind of tries to coin this term family resemblance as a means to identify stuff that obviously kind of belongs to the same category without any one quality as a rule explaining why. So similarly, you have John Fro in this book called Genre, which I think is a really annoying thing to name the book about this, because you're just saying genre over and over again, and then you have to say in genre. John Fro writes about genre. You know, it's annoying, but he qualifies genres as historically changing systems with, he says, fuzzy boundaries, and the purpose of a genre is not found in its exacting precision, but that it gives us a shared language for noticing meaningful similarities.
Yeah.
So I think what's important to me about this is that the rigidity of genre, while stupid, does not mean that genre itself is stupid. I think you just have to resist the urge to be this kind of marketplace of ideas weirdo trying to like math out everything, because the fact of the matter is that language is imprecise.
Yeah.
So like we can't just get caught up in semantics every time we want to talk about a game.
And I think what's interesting about what you're saying here, and this is like 100% agree, is like, is the semantic discussion of what this genre is important? And or is the semantic discussion about like, if this one specific game falls into this genre every single time a game comes out, is that the thing that we should be talking about every single time? And like, I guess I just don't really think so. It feels like these sorts of conversations really like dominate the space when something that doesn't cleanly fit into a box sort of comes out. It's been interesting. It's actually, we're talking about Big Walk, right? But then also Splatoon Raiders had a similar thing with like, is this a looter shooter? Is this an extraction shooter? Like, I don't know. But then you have people using those as shorthand for it, which then also feel kind of imprecise. But then a few years ago, it's funny, we were talking about the Metroid Brainia earlier. Blueprints.
You have to stop saying that.
Okay, we were talking about the MEBs.
I think we ban it.
I have actually never said it out loud until 2 minutes ago.
I find it revolting.
I find it revolting. Yes, I agree.
Okay, all right.
So
okay.
Blueprints comes out, and
Yeah.
people are saying, "Oh, this is a different kind of puzzle game."
Yeah.
And of course, there's subgenres within other genres and stuff like that. But to me, I think that every single time these sorts of conversations really hit hard for people, it's just because we are playing a game that maybe does not fit so neatly into a box. And I'm just so curious about like why we feel so impassioned to make them and to really care about genre in this way.
I have a theory about this.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the thing that is so like a siren song that just like pulls people in when we discuss genre is that it is a very easy thing to discuss. Yeah. It is something that you can deliberate and debate and have a strong opinion about without ever actually playing a video game. So it makes it perfect for posting about on social media. It's very desirable in that way. You can talk about whether or not Big Walk is Friendslop. Dear God.
Oh my gosh. That's going to be clipped, huh?
Whether or not, without even really playing the game.
Yeah.
With kind of just having this like loose understanding of what the game looks like and what you've decided in your head the rules for Friendslop are. So it becomes this kind of like social media bait topic, I think. And it doesn't require you to form an interesting perspective on a game. So that's, I think, the key to all of this.
Yeah.
Because now this is a little bit of a weirder pivot here, but I think it falls into the same discussion. we were talking about on our bonus episode today, which is now available to YouTube members.
Yes.
But about Marvel Tokon reviews.
Yeah.
And something I said to you was, man, it sure feels like all these reviews are just following the same script. You've got to say, okay, the graphics are good. Is it accessible for new players? That's like a key thing that everyone's got to hit. And just kind of like this thing as an object, how is it succeeding when you're looking at it like this and like this and like this and like this? And I think that this is an element of genre as well, because I think the genre of fighting game dictated the rules of what a review should look like. And what that's kind of creating is this effect in which no review for this game is even remotely personal. No review of this game is grounded in perspective and what it's doing to you.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point in the way that like so many reviews sort of exist to just enforce genre. Because I mean, we think about all the reviews of what was the 007 game? 007 First Light. Like so many of them just existed to just reinforce, okay, here are the staples of this genre. Like, does it happen? So many reviews are just a check, like a checklist, right? Of like, okay, does the game have third person shooting combat? Yep, check. Does it have little stealth sections? Yep, check. Like, and it doesn't go any further. And so that is actually a really good point about how genre sort of exists a lot of the times in the game space to just make up the list of what we think we need to see. And then that is oftentimes the extent of the conversation that we are kind of equipped to have with a lot of gaming perspectives, which I think is kind of fascinating because there's so much more exists than just talking about those things. Because I think it comes back, to me, it feels like objectivity discourse, right? Because you can say definitively, okay, what elements are in this video game, right? In the case of something like Big Walk, okay, it's got the proximity chat, it's got kind of goofy elements to it, and then you can start saying, okay, well, what elements are supposed to be in, the Friendslop genre, this co-op multiplayer puzzle sort of experience? And then you can say, well, usually they have proximity chat, usually they have like setups for goofy moments, and then you get to start saying, okay, well, all the boxes sort of line up for this one game, so it does get to be in there. And then we've just returned to objectivity discourse.
And I would add on the classification of the Friendslop term, the slop in question is I think sloppy. It is one in which the controls can be a little loose or hard to predict. There's a friction in the perceived lack of polish in what something you'll find in a lot of Big Walk reviews, for example, is this acknowledgement that the actual act of walking is a little janky.
You get caught on stuff a lot.
Yeah. And that observation will exist at the same time as this kind of, well, it's not a Friendslop game genre discourse, though, which is maybe an entire other thing. But another kind of topical thing that we could bring in here is the announcement of a Ghost of Yote.
Oh, yes.
DLC coming out. So I was reading about this morning. There appears to be it's a pretty expansive DLC package, but one of the elements appears to be the addition of a new survival roguelike mode.
Yeah.
This might sound familiar to you.
Perhaps it does.
What is it? Last of Us Part 2 and God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Yep, right. And God of War Ragnarok both received post-launch roguelike modes.
Yep.
And before we get into anything about this, I guess I just want to ask right up front, how safe of a bet is a Wolverine roguelike mode at this point?
I would say it's such a safe bet that they wouldn't take them. Like they were like, no, this is a guarantee. This is a guarantee. Because it just happens with all these games. And it's not just these games, right? Like Donkey Kong Bonanza did the same thing. They had a roguelike mode as well. But it's kind of an interesting observation because it's like, hey, is this just the way for developers to repackage their game and say infinite content, right? What's next? A Saros roguelite? Are you laughing really hard? Is that why I can't hear you? Is the audio sort of clipping?
I was kind of doing the Jean Grey reveal for the podcast. I was giving the viewer, I didn't want them to miss anything.
Yeah.
So I was giving them the opportunity.
Yeah.
But it's funny, I think it's hard not to take on a cynical disposition when looking at these roguelike modes.
Yeah, of course.
Because I think it's this funny thing where the way that these PlayStation games, I think, are operating in terms of the story, the setting, the tone, the presentation, the kind of modern prestige action game, and then being like, okay, what if we took all of that stuff away and we just kind of showed you the machine that's underneath it.
Yeah.
The game beneath the game. And now, rather than all of this stuff that we put around it, how does this kind of thing stand up on its own? And what's been funny to me is that I actually think that these PlayStation roguelike games are accidentally revealing the weaknesses of the games. Because once you divorce the Last of Us Part 2's combat from its kind of tone, you realize that it's not so good.
So as listeners to the bonus show on, patreon.com/criticalerror, or again now on YouTube, on our membership feed, whatever that looks like. It's a mess right now. I'm so sorry. But I've been playing a lot of Fortnite. And Simpsons Fortnite is back, but it's only in the reload mode, which, if you're not familiar, the reload mode is just Fortnite, but instead of being a battle royale, it's just like a PvP. I mean, it's all PvP, but it's like just like free for all deathmatch essentially. And I think it's not good because I think it, as what you're saying, like it divorces the actual mechanics from the mode that it's sort of meant to be experienced. And when you do that, you sort of start to see the cracks in how it all works. And you go, wait, this is not the way it feels like it's meant to be viewed and experienced.
And I think maybe even breaking it down in this way, again, as I kind of look at a shortcoming in the critical space and try to offer a corrective, is I think when this Ghost of Yotei roguelike DLC rolls around, the worst version of a review would contain some kind of, well, the combat was good then, and it's good now.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I do.
And, yeah.
The idea of, if you liked Ghost of Yotei, you will like this because it's more, which I would push back on, right? I mean, for a lot of reasons, but I really liked Ghost of Tsushima, if you remember. And a lot of the tone, it felt like in the conversation surrounding something like Ghost of Yotei was, well, if you liked Ghost of Tsushima, this is more Ghost of Tsushima. And I really don't like Ghost of Yotei because just more is not enough. Like the reasons I liked that first game was because of how it was packaged and because of how it all worked together. Whereas this game, is more. Technically, I've actually been getting a lot of comments on that video lately that I made about it, where people are like, yeah, but like the gameplay is better in this. And I kind of am like, but who cares?
Cool.
Like, yeah, great. Like, who cares? It's a worse game. It's a lesser game.
And it's funny, the even that comment is kind of orbiting the discussion that we're having here, because it is a comment that I think resists the experience.
Yeah,
it's one that's like you ever pull up those websites, like you're on Best Buy or something, and it's showing you like you have 3 printers or washing machines?
Oh yeah, and it's just like in a
the
row,
features,
like
and it's like it has the check mark, or like a new phone. It's like, which phone you're gonna get? It has the list of the check marks. It's like you could look at Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei. You could look at Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. You could look at any game and its sequel and kind of break it down. A great one for this, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and kind of do this kind of like checklist thing. But I think to do that would be to lack the acknowledgement of the personal, intimate experience one has when they actually engage with a text.
Yeah.
And it's this funny thing to just kind of be like, well, I can do all of the stuff that I could do in Ghost of Tsushima, but I can do more here. So if you drop me into a combat encounter, I am having more fun here.
Right.
It's like, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, did you not have to start the game? Did it not make you feel something? Like,
So do you remember in just to 100% like prop up your point? Do you remember in God of War Ragnarok, you get a spear and they make a whole thing about you getting a spear?
Peter, that's that sequence. I despise that sequence because if I may,
But please.
it's this funny thing where that game creates a scenario where you need a very specific tool to get past this very specific wall.
Yes.
And one of these characters just goes, well, that's a relief. I've
actually known about this for a while.
I happen to know exactly where this very specific tool is. Yes. Oh man, drove me freaking insane. Anyways, please.
But that is more. You have 3 weapons in this game, whereas in the first one you just had 2.
More. Oh man, that's awesome.
And so I was talking to someone about my maybe disdain or like anxiety or maybe dread, however you want to call it, for the upcoming God of War games that they said that they're making. And one of the responses that this friend had to me was like, yeah, but like, I'm just so excited like to have like another weapon in another play style. And I was just like, but it's just more. Right?
Because yes, and this is something is being made clear to me here.
Yeah.
Because when this might not sound like it, but this is related to the conversation we're having about genre.
Yeah.
Because when you suss out video games in this way, it's like every game becomes superior to the game before it because you are so captured by what the genre should consist of.
Yes.
That it creates this rule set, which I think also leads into why you see kind of the inflation of review scores over time.
Yeah.
Is because we start looking at games like this. We start looking at games like, well, a fighting game should have this and this and this and this. And then over time, eventually, the people who make these games are going to adhere to those desires, and the people who review them are going to go, you did it.
I think you can see a really, really good example of this with Death Stranding. When that first game came out, it was kind of a big question mark about like, what is this? You're like a postman, but it's but it sort of borrows a lot of language from things like third-person shooters, because also it is a third-person shooter in that sometimes you get a gun and you have to shoot people in third person. But I wouldn't qualify that game as a third-person shooter. I would not look at like Uncharted and Death Stranding and say these are the same. And so it was kind of divisive when it came out. And then when the sequel comes out, it scores much better in reviews, and people, it's pretty much not divisive at all, at least from what I saw, because it leans a little bit more into those third-person shooter things. And so it's like adhering to the genre now, it feels like, that it sort of thinks it's supposed to be. And I find that to be really fascinating, because I think what makes that original game so gripping is that it's not like those games. And it kind of says like, yeah, you can shoot people, but if you want to give into that impulse, you're kind of going to make your life a lot harder and worse. And it's kind of not even really worth it. I don't know. Like, I think that's kind of a fascinating look at how genre works, and that it feels like for Death Stranding 2, they just sort of threw their hands up and they're like, it's a third-person shooter. Who cares?
Yeah, it's funny how I'm realizing a lot of these PlayStation games have kind of like a funny relationship with genre, because now I'm thinking about Saros and how it kind of it kind of defies its genre.
Yeah.
And in doing so becomes a like weaker representation.
I mean, that joke about putting a roguelite mode in Saros is either a joke about how often they're putting roguelite modes in these things, or the fact that it's not really a roguelite, you know, like it's completely disinterested in that. And so, you know, what's interesting too, is you brought up like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom and stuff like that. And what I find fascinating about about a game like that is, what genre would you even say those fit into? I think this is just the reason I'm bringing this up is like, I think it shows just how sort of fickle and fluid genre can be, because I think people would say like, oh, action adventure. And you're like, yeah, but
no.
They're not the same, right? Like, do you understand what I'm getting at?
No, action adventure. It's like the last sentence in the first paragraph of the essay I've written is literally like, debating Friendslop is stupid. See action adventure and Metroidvania. Like, we could do this all day.
Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely meaningless. I do wonder this, because here's the thing. I think something that's being exposed to me in this conversation right now is, if you went up to any person writing about games or anybody trying to talk about games, nobody would tell you, I'm a real stickler for genre. Nobody would do that.
No.
So it's this thing we kind of accidentally find ourselves doing. And now I'm interested in this, right? Because I do wonder, what is it that makes mainstream critics this way? And I think there's a few things I want to point to. I think maybe a lesson to take away from this conversation is that when writing a review, when performing an act of criticism, I think it's important to be wary of how beholden one is to fandom.
Yeah, I agree.
Because fandom and maybe like consumer expectations are maybe driving too much of what is said in a review, to the point that it's so kind of clear what the fans are looking for, who are already buying the game, and what the kind of preconceived notions of information that one is going to find in a review. It is so clear what these things are that you run into these scenarios where reviews all just read the same. It's just there, and it's like obvious. And I think that is a function of genre as well. It is the kind of implicit identification of somebody in your brain who is reading a review for a fighting game. Who do you assume that is? There's two people. The person who's really into fighting games and the person who's like, I'm a little scared, but I kind of want to try this out. We've just completely made these people up.
Yep.
But that's who every single one of these reviews is for. And it's funny. It's like, it's truly hard to find a review for one of these fighting games that is centered on the self.
Yeah.
And a fully committed human response from someone who played the game is so lovely to me, because this funny thing kind of happened with Marvel Tokon. They didn't do any pre-release codes, so there were no day one reviews. And I think that the day one review being this sort of like, all right, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of this consumer, you can poke your fun at that or whatever, but at least the purpose is clear. As long as we're not pretending that's not what we're doing. But the game is out. Not only is the game out, 2 weeks ago, there was a public beta that anybody could play.
Right.
You can watch YouTube videos of this game. You could study this game endlessly. What are we doing?
Yeah.
When we're still so focused on this imaginary person, to the point that I don't think I can make the excuse that this is some like, well, they're trying to serve an audience member, they're trying to do that. I think sincerely what might be going on there is there's just kind of a lack of imagination and maybe a lack of presence. Of being present when you're playing a game. Yeah.
It's funny, like, it is an adherence to writing about a genre in the way that you think the fan of that genre would want you to write about it. And that exists either as like the, huge fighting game fans in the case of Marvel Tokon, or the complete newcomer. But it always comes back to like, or at least how it reads to me, is like, what would the person who likes this genre want me to say? And never, what do I want to say?
A fundamental misunderstanding taking place is that when one reviews a video game, the video game is the object, because that refuses to acknowledge the fact that the player is part of the artwork.
Yeah.
And that is so clear in video games. It's more clear in video games than it is anywhere else.
Yes.
It's kind of this beautiful thing, because I talk about this a lot. This is a classic literary theory thing. You've heard me say it a million times, that the experience is shared between the person and the encounter, right? The art, it's between the artwork and the person. That's why you have individual interpretations, individual experiences.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, the video game just makes this so obvious. I missed the jump. What are you saying?
Right.
You are obviously involved in the thing that's unfolding in front of you.
Yeah.
So there is almost this isolation of the game that happens. And I think people need to do a better job of maybe confronting the experience, which I would say we could define as the game combined with the player, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think the problem here is that it feels like we're so often unequipped to do that, because that's just not what anyone wants to do. Because it's much, in my opinion, more difficult to confront yourself and confront how you actually felt about an experience than to just run through the list of what are the things that are expected. It's a fighting game. Okay, so it's got a big roster. Yes or no, right? Does it have a practice mode that needs this? Yes or no, right? You're going to say something.
I loved what you just said, this confrontation of the self, because that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Because playing a game is not just an encounter with the game. You are now seeing your choices and your ability on screen reflected back at you. So it becomes an encounter with yourself. And I think like this existential experience of reading a review and learning who is this person when placed inside these challenges and these constraints? What happened to them?
Yeah.
I'd be so interested in reading that. But
yeah.
you know what I read? I read about there's 4 different practice options in this mode. Okay.
Right.
Like,
Cool.
you know, yeah.
And
cool.
so here's something interesting about that too, is like, I think it's just harder to really confront yourself about this sort of stuff and to like really be able to voice it and write it in a way that makes sense, because it's very difficult and it's very introspective, and it requires, I think, a lot of time to sort of sit with an experience, which oftentimes the writers don't have, based on, you know, whether that's their parent company stuff or whether that's when a code came in or if a code even came in at all in the case of something like Marvel Tokon. But it reminds me a little bit about the way people talk about and want to piece together games with sort of these like vague stories that are told sort of indirectly. You know, obviously the easy example of this is something like Elden Ring or Dark Souls or whatever, but you see it in things like Hollow Knight and whatever else, where a game is often more about like the setting than the actual like A to B narrative. And the reason why I think a lot of these sorts of games and piecing these games together is so popular, you look at someone like Vati Vitya on YouTube, who's like, has like, I don't know, at least 1 million subscribers, I think, just from talking about like and piecing together like lore from item descriptions and stuff like that, which is all very cool. And this is not a knock against him or this sort of work necessarily, but it is, I think, sort of core to what we're talking about here, is that it is work to put together what happened here, to piece together the puzzle of what this story is. That's work for sure. But then to take it a step further and talk about what it actually all means, I think is more difficult. And I think when we look at genre and the way we talk about, not more difficult, but like it's requires more introspection and things like that. And when we talk about genre, so often people just want to do that. They just want to put together the puzzle of, okay, all of these elements fit together in this, and so it is this genre. And people do not want to take that leap further and say, okay, so if it is that genre, then what? If it is all of this stuff leading towards this one point, then how do I feel about it? Or how does that game even use genre in order to either like make a compelling emotional experience or tell a gripping narrative or whatever you want?
Yeah, it's funny. I think like bringing up these like YouTubers who do the story explained videos is an interesting comparison, because on one hand you have video game reviews, which I think like almost implicitly represent a way of playing a game, which is like, this is the correct way to play a game.
Yeah.
And the kind of like terminal state is like a sense of mastery over the video game, which is why you kind of see these turns of phrases so often in video game reviews, which are like, but after this many hours, I was darting around doing blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like, because that's like the only way that you can correctly, that's the correct place you end.
Right.
And I almost think that there's a similarity there with analyzing story, both of those terms in quotation marks, in this way, because there is this reconstructing of a plot in which there is a correct answer, in which you can end at a terminal state of, I know all of the events and I can explain why the world looks like this now.
And because it's indisputable, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, yep, this, like, I know for a fact this happened because it's written here. It just took me a while to find it. And it's not to say it's not work. It's not to say that it isn't also cool to do and whatever, but it is, to me, it goes back to like, oh, it's about objectivity and being able to say, this is what is in this game. And that's great. But for me to find like meaningful games writing and meaningful like games discussions, they have to move away from just wanting to do that, because that's fine and can be cool and helps us shape the understanding of what we're looking at and dealing with. But it is the part that's beyond that is, I think, the most interesting and compelling and gripping for me.
Can I say something a little out of pocket?
You can say anything.
I guess when people point at these Souls games and tell me they have like an amazing story, I just can't take them seriously.
What do you mean?
I think when they say amazing story, are they talking about the game? Are they talking about the game?
They're talking about, usually what they're talking about is the stuff that you read in the game.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think my impression is that they're actually talking about the experience of being a fan.
That's also part of it, I think.
Yeah, it's I just find it hard to believe somebody's picking up one of these games, one of these Elden Rings, is having an experience with the game, and is walking away going, what an amazing story. I think maybe they are transformed into somebody who says that once it's decoded.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Because I think there is something to this, right? So I made a video about Bloodborne, and for me to really like feel comfortable speaking from a place of like, hey, I know this like concretely. I did some of the work to try and figure out what I think happened, and I was like, got it. And then I checked my answers with other people, and it was kind of like yes and no. Like I got some stuff what I think is right, some stuff wrong, whatever. And that was like fun, but that kind of wasn't like in the game, right? That was sort of an extra textual sort of thing. And that's not to say that it isn't fun and can't be its own like version of enjoying the game, but it is, I think, to your point, like, does that make for it having a great story? And like, unclear. I think it has like the background setting of that story is interesting. Like the different things that happen in the lead up to that story. And then I do think that the story of the game itself is quite compelling. But when we talk about like, oh, it has a great story, it's like a lot of it is sort of just pieced together randomly and very vaguely. And I don't know if really any of these sorts of games have that necessarily.
I just encounter this so often where it's
lore. I think it's people are usually just talking about the lore.
It just bugs me because I think part of the responsibility of any story is to kind of earn my affection, and and not necessarily positive affection, but you know, to affect me. And I guess I often see this kind of richness of the paratext mistaken for richness of the text, because if I play Elden Ring, I barely understand my character. Yeah. I barely understand what's going on in this world. But then I watch this excellent, super well produced hour and 15-minute lore video that gathers together all of these item descriptions, reconstructs the chronology so that I can easily understand it. Yeah. And then kind of proposes these compelling interpretations of every character, every boss, all of their motivations. I now have accrued this very intellectually satisfying experience. Now, when I go back to Elden Ring, I am affected. Yeah. I am, but where did that experience occur? And I think to charge the game with that is a mistake. And oftentimes I do feel that the mainstream critic is so beholden to the fandom that there is this kind of like, well, the heads know that these games have good stories, so I'm not going to say otherwise in my review, even though I didn't feel it and I'm incapable of feeling it until somebody constructs that video that lets me see the full scope in a sense.
I think that's fair, because I do think that what's interesting about this sort of thing too is that some games are better at conveying a vague story than others. I think I don't necessarily love the way that the Souls games and From Software does their stories, because they're like so completely removed, it feels like, from the actual events of what you're doing in the game. You sort of like interact with some of those characters, some of the main players and whatever, but it's often happening in such a way that like it is very difficult to really parse without having read every single item description in the whole thing.
But I don't want to be really clear here too. Is that I think the Souls game is the easy comparison, but I feel the same way about Xenoblade Chronicles too. Sure.
Anything that's just lore, right?
Yeah, anything where people talk a lot about the lore. I completely agree.
But I do think that there's like ways of doing that works and ways of doing that maybe doesn't work. I don't necessarily love it in like the Souls games, whatever. I think it's fine, but not incredible. To varying degrees based on different ones.
But I think what I'm most interested in is that there is in these reviews this kind of judgment of the material. Yeah. And the judgment of the material just leaves so much to be desired, because you can have all of this stuff infuse meaning into the material, and then you go back genuinely believing that it was the material that did that for you. But here's the thing. And like a crossword puzzle can produce an extremely satisfying act of reconstruction. Yeah. Does a crossword puzzle contain an extraordinary narrative? Is it so hard to believe that maybe the thing that we love is the reconstruction, is the participation in fandom, is the kind of exclusive club that you gain access to once you make yourself sit through that 75-minute YouTube video.
Because what I think is interesting, though, is like at the very least, it's not that the game is 100% removed from that, right? Because it did create that space to a certain extent by having all of those things in it. It's just about like whether or not we are interested in doing the work to understand them ourselves, right? Because imagine, okay, so like you could, if you wanted to, play a game like Elden Ring and sit down and figure out all the stuff that whoever on YouTube has figured out. You could do that, but I think most of us are just not inclined to do that because it's not how we experience games and are interested in actually playing games and thinking about them, which is fine. But then like the game can do that. It's just that for so many of us, we are rarely interested in engaging with them in that way and are instead more interested in engaging with fandom surrounding the game, which is of course extra textual.
It's just to me, it's like such a surrender. It's such a, I think that like when you can acknowledge that this kind of like accumulation of lore knowledge creates membership in a fandom, which I think is obvious. I'm deeply suspicious of critics or players kind of surrendering their experience to genre or to this kind of subcultural consensus. Because what I see happening when everybody starts, trying to be the proper Souls fan that consumes the videos from these big YouTubers who have made a name deconstructing this stuff or reconstructing, is that I see people constantly overwriting their own experience with somebody else's. Yes. And I find that to be so uninteresting. And it creates this kind of, again, the same thing with the reviews, these just interchangeable responses. It's like when I dude, can I stream these Xenoblade games, and it's like there is a implicit script to being a Xenoblade streamer that I'm supposed to follow, and I can sense it. I don't know what's going to happen in the game, but I can sense it when everybody's kind of like waiting for this thing to happen and waiting for the response. They're like prompting a specific response from me, and something that I have to do to stay honest with myself and my own emotions is that I have to recognize that that's happening and ask myself how I actually feel, not how I'm being prompted to feel by the fandom.
Yes, it's funny. I saw a comment under, do you know what Red Letter Media is? They're like a YouTube channel where, they like review movies and stuff. And I don't remember, this was years ago, I think. One of the top comments on one of their video reviews was like, I'm so excited to watch this video so I can finally know what my opinion of the film is. Which is like obviously like a tongue-in-cheek, like jokey thing. And I don't necessarily think that critics in the game space do that, but I do think fandom does that. For games and in terms of like shaping how we feel about it, right? Because I think so often if you want to engage with a game online, like there is this like checking your work, right? Like, okay, I played the new, I played Marvel Tokon. We like it, right? We all like it.
Yes. 100%.
And then if you like it, but everyone else doesn't, it's not that maybe you're going to tell yourself that you don't like it and it's bad, actually. I think most people don't actually do that. But maybe you do start to doubt yourself and say, was it actually good?
Oh, see, this is where I gotta tell you.
Yeah.
I think if you play Marvel Tokon and you have a good experience, and then you see Maximilian Dudes online, and he's saying this game has all of these problems, X, Y, and Z, and there's stuff you never encountered. Just from what I've seen, I think that 100% is affecting the critical outcome. Sure. I think that does get in people's heads.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. And that's why I think, like, I wonder to, we've talked before about the idea of like day one reviews and how they work. And if, pre-release codes are helpful or, sort of more as maybe a detriment to the discussion surrounding video games. But when we see that outlets do not get codes for something, I do think that there is, there can be a more interesting review environment, because then you do have people sort of looking around and going like, this is what the consensus is. And sometimes that it makes for more interesting reviews, because then they can either, rebut it or whatever. I think about like the Hollow Knight Silksong reviews, I thought were kind of fascinating in this way, because they didn't have the pre-release stuff. And so there was a certain level of like, well, I guess we can't really even check our work because there's no score to go up. So I'm just going to put my thoughts down right now and see what's up.
I'd also say that there's almost this critical imperative that emerges when you don't get a pre-release code where everybody can play the game. So you are being the kind of the witness to the game and reporting back to people who can't play it yet.
You don't have that job.
It looks a lot dumber too.
Yeah, because
and I think that looking dumber is good for people.
Right, because I think it asks people to actually engage with the game outside of just saying this is the genre. It's a Metroidvania.
And you have to write something interesting.
Correct.
You have to write something interesting that isn't carried by the fact that I can't witness the game yet, so I'm going to consume this review because I just want to play the game. So I'm just on the internet. I'm Googling the game.
Because we talked about once, I'm sure, where it's like the review as it functions right now on most of these mainstream sites, it's just kind of like it's good, stay in line type situation.
Stay in line. I love,
right?
That's one of my favorite things I've ever yelled on this podcast.
Yes. Stay in line, right? It's good. It's good. But when a game doesn't have those, then that role is non-existent. Because the game is out. We already know if we need to be in line or not. Because Marvel Tokon's out and we could play it and it's good or it's bad. And so then the person whose job it has been traditionally to say, stay in line, don't stay in line, whatever, now has to actually really engage with the thing outside of just listing, well, it's a fighting game. And so it has the things most fighting games have, and they are good. We all know that because everyone's already playing it. So what can you write to make it actually sort of fascinating and like personal? And it seems like with these Marvel Tokon ones, it hasn't happened. But yeah,
I love this because my Twitch audience knows this after seeing me stream the game. I like these fighting games quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I guess there is a part of me that is genuinely so interested in this idea of like, okay, here's your starting point for your review. Marvel Tokon is better, or you could say worse, I don't care. For this example, better is better than Street Fighter 6. How could you convince me that you believe this game is better? What is your strategy? And I think that that's fascinating because there are ways that I think after having this conversation that the audience can imagine that this would really fall apart. And it is kind of this taking stock of all of this stuff and being like, look at all this stuff. Right. It's better than that stuff. But what I'm looking for is that affection, is how did Street Fighter 6 affect me?
Right.
And then how does Marvel Tokon affect me? And I find that to be so much more compelling.
Because I also think that it's important to note that taking stock of the things from the genre is not inherently wrong. It's just that it can't just end there because it's what you're saying. Is Street Fighter 6 better than Marvel Tokon? I see what that article looks like in my mind. But it's like literally
what a funny question. What a hilarious question. To genuinely try to answer it though, I am quite compelled by this.
It would be really interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
But I can see the worst version of this that like I'm like seeing in my head that's like up on whatever website that's just like the roster. Well, when we look at the roster, this game has 8 characters, this game has 25, right? And it's just like, okay, it's so funny because yes, you are called to make these faux objective analyses where it's like the roster diversity, more good. But is more good? Why? And why in this game is more good versus less good?
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. You know what is good though? Always
tell me.
Jake. It's the community over at patreon.com/criticalerror. Of course, the Critical Error Nation, which by the way has expanded to YouTube membership. So if that's your thing, you can check it out there. I don't think we're going to keep bringing it up, to be honest with you. It's been one episode and I'm already like, it's like getting in the way of saying all this.
Listen, the YouTube memberships is here because we had some people asking about it. As, Patreon in terms of in certain countries getting on there might be difficult. Yeah. So we put it up there. I will say it is a little bit more expensive than the $5 tier on our Patreon. That is to offset the YouTube cut. It's really just to access those bonus episodes. But it is there as an option. Wanted to provide if that is of interest to anybody else. But we do have some people that we have to thank from Patreon.
Yes, the Critical Error Nation, specifically the members of the Jake and Peter tier. These are, of course, the people at the $20 tier, the people at the top of our eating more of that pineapple. Look at you. Try to get it in while I'm saying thank you to people like Andrew Bolkar, Evan Snee, Mitch Dyer, Robert Quesada, Thick Dick Mystic, Dalton Mersman, and Taylor Ryu. Taylor, would you mind directing me how to phonetically pronounce your name? Rio? Is it Rio?
I say it in the voice thing every week.
Okay.
Taylor Rio / Jetson plays games.
Yes. Is it Rio? Okay. Wonderful.
Rio.
Taylor Rio. Thank you very much. I, of course, just want to get it right in the way that sometimes people look at my last name and they go like, I'm not even going to try. And I'm like, you could try. You could try.
No.
And I'm
For
saying I
the
wanna
better
try.
part of a year, I just refused to say our friend Abram Buhner's last name because I looked at all those letters. I saw that UE, and I said, I won't be participating in this. But I learned.
Yeah. Well, we've had a bunch of new members on the Patreon and upgrading members as well. Thank you so much to everyone who's here. We want to give a special shout out to the members of Critical Error Royalty.
With our special sound, play the sound for this week. Hello, everyone. As I am sure you are aware, in the video version of the podcast, I like to kind of mix up what I put on screen while I do the reading of the members of Critical Error Royalty. For this week, I decided to go into my PlayStation app and download the clips that I had saved from the past week, the 30-second clips. So that's what you're getting here. Okay, thank you to the members of Critical Error Royalty supporting us on patreon.com/critical error. I'm talking about Andrew Bolkar, Ansel Trait, Evan Snee, Mitch Dyer, Mayro, Robert Quesada, Thick Dick Mystic, Dalton Mersman, Taylor Rio, Connor Truelove, Adept Charon, Danny Disaster, James Pierre Reed, LeBron James, Jacob Richter, Jared Cousineau, Cold Ramen Greg, Cole, Kale Chow Shin, Pinky Oats, Alex Sims, Freya the Awesome, Non-Existent Mergley, Josh Day, Luis Aguas Viva, Evil Peter, Barrett Courtney, Marty Hess, and Tabriz Sadiq. Thank you all so much for supporting us at the level of Critical Error Royalty. We could not do this without you. We'll see you soon. Peter, I've prepared a piece for you this week. Peter, I've pickled a piece for you this week.
Oh, it's been pickled, hasn't it?
You did
it in just a week. That's
right.
You know,
That's right.
Good pickling.
May I?
Please, I would love it.
Great.
Nothing more.
Flight attendants outlined the possibility of death and disaster, but it was too late. Every dumb little annoying thing that could possibly happen on an airplane was already happening. The babies cried. The fat old man beside me had annexed the armrest and was using his elbow to periodically remind me of the conquest. The pilot announced that we would be losing time in the air, which sounded insane to me. But what was I supposed to do? Argue with the pilot? Surely he knew something about the profoundly gray tube with the movie theater blue carpeting hurtling through the sky that I had yet to learn. We were going to arrive late, even though we had left perfectly on time. Fine. I don't know how I convinced myself to head home in the first place. My stomach turned like the ocean, churning further up my chest with each passing minute. Maybe motion sickness, maybe my body had caught on that I was headed back to Central Ohio. Then there was the smell. Too pungent and too persistent to be food or the passing body odor of a stranger. There was definitely, I think, a small child in the row behind me. Could they have? Did they? And no one was doing anything about it? Was I on a poop plane? I lowered my chin and hunched over my phone like a squirrel feeding on an acorn. I was scrolling through the same text thread that I had gorged on for the past 6 months. Jenny Damstrom. Flights suck without you, I typed. The old man sitting next to me. He elbows me. You're really not supposed to be texting on an airplane. I'm not texting. And I put the phone face down like I had been caught texting. I'm just looking at a conversation. I saw you typing, he says. Look, I pointed to the tiny plane at the top of the screen, airplane mode. He squinted. It's a setting that you activate so you can still use your phone on a plane. You can't enough. I know about the airplane mode. Sorry. I hadn't been having a lot of in-person conversations lately. Maybe I was out of practice, though I did wonder how much someone who called it the airplane mode could really know about airplane mode. So what's on there, he asked. You were really looking at it. I looked at him, pale, gray suit, white shirt, 2 buttons that shouldn't be open, silver hair coming out of his chest and his eyebrows and his everywhere, except the top of his head, a stranger. By tonight, he would surely just be the man that I once sat next to on an airplane. I turned over the phone. Jenny appeared on the lock screen. Jenny's a child wails from behind us. I wait politely. It's text from my fiance. Fiance! His face opened into a toothy grin. Mazel! His voice was naval and gravelly, reminded me of my dad's dad. He introduced himself as Larry. You love her? Yeah. What's her name? Jenny. Jenny, Larry said. My God, I love that name. I've always loved that name. So what, you miss her? You were reading your conversations on your telephone? Something about that sounded accusatory. I guess I just didn't say any. What are you, 25? I'm 28. That's young love. I remember it well, he said. My phone lit again. This is her? On the picture, Jenny sat behind a wooden table barely wider than her own body, one hand beneath her chin, the other around a glass of milky coffee. Her coat was pink and yellow and violet against this charcoal brick wall. Everyone always talked about, they always complimented her blonde hair. I liked the way she moved her eyes. She wasn't quite looking at the camera. So they wandered a few degrees above the lens, narrowed with the concentration of somebody trying to read the bottom line of an eye chart. For years, I thought I had taken a photograph of Jenny. Now I thought I maybe had captured a photograph of the way she saw me. She's gorgeous, Larry said. He studied the picture. She must really love you, if you know what I mean. Larry, fuck you. Larry laughed. You give me Jenny's number and I'll tell her that you're a good boy. I'll tell her myself. Well, I said, that might be nice. Jenny had been dead for 6 months, but loved. Still seemed inaccurate. You know, Larry said, I married a shiksa too, did you? My first wife, Beth. First wife. Larry looked out the window. Sometimes I wake up and I think I'm still, whatever he still thought he was, I think he left it somewhere over Pennsylvania. He explained to me that Beth was his high school sweetheart, the love of his life, he called her. She got good marks and sang soprano. And whenever her shoes got even a little bit dirty, she would bend down and clean them. For their first dance, she insisted on driving Larry's car, which he assured me was a really crazy thing to suggest at the time. The car was seafoam green. Its headlights had metal accents like eyelashes. Beth liked to go. When they were in, she wanted to go out. And when they were out, she wanted to go somewhere else. She had a little imaginary motor running inside of her. Cleveland, Chicago, California. Larry couldn't even remember half the places anymore. But the particular destination never seemed to have been the point. At the dance, some of the guys made fun of me, because Beth was driving. I wanted to agitate the gravel. Does that mean leave? You mean like leave? You wanted to leave? Yeah, leave. But Beth said you can't ever let other people dictate your happiness. Easier said than done. Well, we stayed and danced, and I only had to give out one singular knuckle sandwich. Tommy DeLuca. He deserved it anyway. And you got a girlfriend. After that, Beth basically kept Larry's car. Every weekend, he walked out to the tree at the end of his parents' driveway, and he would wait for her. Sometimes she arrived, and the seafoam green thing barely stopped moving before Larry climbed inside. Other times, they would just stay beneath the tree. What would you do there? Johnson's and coursework, Larry said. She was better at math than me. He laughed to himself. I had never seen anybody so happy to be bad at math. Wait, you Johnson's? You mean like Johnson's ice cream? Of course. Where was this? North Cassidy. I sat up. Are you going to Bexley, Ohio? Larry looked at me. Yeah, I grew up there. I knew the tree. Everyone that grew up there knew the tree. In a town full of these things, leaves and bark, this thing looked like it had escaped from the Lion King. Its branches splitting out almost immediately from the trunk and spreading wide like an outfielder's glove reaching for a pop fly. I had been in the house at the end of that driveway. I had been drunk beneath that tree. I had kissed someone beneath it. I had probably peed on that tree. All that time, Larry had been there first. What happened to Beth? I asked him. Larry knocked a couple of his knuckles against the window. One February night, Beth was driving to his house for his birthday. First sit-down dinner with his parents. It was a classic Ohio February. Snow, ice, sleet, grime, discomfort, the entire state shellacked in gray. Beth did not know that she was on ice until she was already caught in its frozen current skidding toward the tree. Bang, Larry said. Everyone heard it. He and his father ran down the driveway while his mother called 911. Larry sprinted ahead. His father yelled for him to wait. I'm sorry, I said. Beth was fine, he replied. She was fine. Something in me fell. I hated him. I hated Larry a little bit for telling me that she was fine. I was still finding Jenny's bobby pins in my house. Under the bed, behind the toilet, between couch cushions, once inside a shoe that I could have sworn I'd worn several times since. I kept every fucking one. Larry went on talking. The car was totaled. Beth had some bruises, a broken wrist, stitches along her forehead, all temporary things. He told me this with the gratitude of a man who still considered that February night one of the luckiest of his life. I think I wanted some little password of catastrophe to pass between us. A coffee mug that he couldn't make himself use anymore. Her side of the mattress refusing to rise, something stupid enough that nobody who had not lost somebody would understand why it mattered. Instead, Larry tore open into a bag of mixed nuts. I had not even noticed the flight attendant bring them. Been here in your stomach all flight, he said. I'd skipped breakfast that morning. I had coffee for dinner the night before. For Larry, I realized, Jenny was still somewhere below us. Maybe she was waiting at baggage claim, maybe at home, maybe annoyed that I had not texted her before the flight. Airplane mode. For a few thousand more feet, I let her be there. Me and Beth stayed together, we got married, everything else. But sometimes I wake up and remember who I used to be. The car had folded around that tree, Larry said. The metal separating around the trunk like toothbrush bristles making way for teeth. It was eventually repaired or maybe replaced, he couldn't remember, but Beth never drove that car again. The seafoam green car stopped appearing at the end of the driveway. The cities that she had once named for Larry, Cleveland, Chicago, California, wherever they were going, whatever came next went unnamed. Larry got behind the wheel instead, and he drove, and Beth sat beside him. Years went by. It was my car, Larry said. My house, my tree, my birthday. So what are you telling me? What was the point of this? Don't crash the car? Larry looked at me. I was the tree, he said. We should have kept going. Thank you.
Love this. I think hairpins are the most devastating item in the whole world, because I think that you find them forever and they are very devastating. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So there was a detail in there I really like. Do you like talking to people on planes? Do you personally, do you like it?
I don't go out of my way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. If it happens, it happens. I'll be a pleasant,
yes,
row sharer.
Yeah.
But no. I'm trying to play my Nintendo Switch too.
Yeah. I like this a lot. I'm chewing on this.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't know. Just yeah. There's a lot in here. There's a lot in here. I'm thinking a lot about who knows what and what they're letting on and what they're not. Mm-hmm. I think one of my favorite things about this is, as the author, thinking about what Larry is able to intuit about the main character sitting next to him. Yeah. And this, you assume that he's just kind of this old guy who wants to talk, and he's just telling you this story because he would tell anybody this story. Yeah. But I actually don't think that's true. And I think he maybe picks up on a little bit more than we realize. Yeah. And that's kind of why he I think is telling the story with a clear maybe kind of moral at the end of it. But I think the thing I was most compelled by here is just that feeling of like, you know, you lose somebody and then somebody tells you a story about when they lost somebody.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help.
Never.
But then a funny thing happens here where our character kind of thinks that's where we're going. And then that's not what happens.
No.
And he's pissed about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that. I don't know. Yeah. So that's what I was compelled by.
I like it. I like it's an interesting dynamic too. And it's one that like is so, immediately like legible. Like, because I ask, like, do you like talking to people on the plane? Because I know that so many people despise talking to strangers in public, and planes are kind of tough because you're like sort of a captive audience member, you know? And I don't mind it. I'm the same way where I'm like, I'm not going to initiate a conversation, but if a person is talking to me, there's no reality in which I just like turn my face away from them.
Yeah, right.
I like this because it starts off and you think that, you know, like, oh, this is just a chatty guy, in the way that we've all had those kinds of chatty guys who maybe have not picked up on, like, I don't necessarily want to talk to you. But then I like where this goes and how it kind of subverts that and is maybe not exactly what it feels like on the tin.
I always like giving away everything really early, like suspiciously early.
Yeah.
Like the first sentence of this is the flight attendants outlined the possibility of death and disaster, but it was far too late. Yeah. And I'm like, I like that. You know, that always tickles me when I get to do stuff like that. It's always a funny question. I think when I go through drafts of something like this, one of the key things I come back to over and over again is I have like 10 different versions with when I tell the audience that she's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always think that that's like a funny thing, because you don't want to play it too. You don't want it to be this moment that's like,
right. It can't. It has to be more casual, because it feels a little bit more casual to this character. Yeah. Not casual, but it's like he's not, at least from my understanding of it, he's not like flying home for her funeral, right? It's not like so immediate. It's more just sort of like accepted. Right. And there's clues too leading into it, being like, you're on airplane mode. Right. And so it's like, you're not texting her. And so he thinks you're texting it. But you know what I mean? But it's like, well, I can't even be texting her, like, at all. Right. I think it's interesting.
I had wanted to write this novel about committing a mortal sin here, by the way. About a writer who leaves his hometown with somebody from there as well. And they're together forever, and they're kind of those people that like got out of the small hometown and never went back. Yeah. And then she dies, and he is maybe like unable to produce any more work, so he decides he's going to go back home, and that will maybe help him get somewhere or whatever. Yeah. But finds in this hometown that everybody kind of hates him. And it's funny now to be like, you kind of go home expecting to get the victim's parade. And it's like, I've suffered a horrible loss. Everybody's going to be treating me a certain way. And then to not get treated like that at all. There's a certain, I mean, I think we've all experienced something like that to a certain extent, right? Where you're like, oh, everyone's going to be like this to me. And then you show up and they're not. And they're like, there's such a like, fuck to that I find very, charming is the wrong word, and relatable is the wrong word, even though it's both. But I like that dynamic a lot. Cool. Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. I guess we'll see you next week. Catch you in the next one. Bye.